Putin's visit to India. There is very good news on the horizon that President Putin is going to visit India, possibly in the month of August, maybe in the beginning of September. The Indian National Security Advisor, Shri Ajit Doval Kirti Chakra, is presently in Moscow, having detailed discussions with his counterpart in Russia, and he has given this welcome news that President Putin is likely to visit India for the annual summit that takes place each year, which we haven't had for some time, but he is going to come to India in August. Now, there is a backdrop to all this. What is the backdrop, sir? The backdrop is very clear. Under President Joe Biden, India-America relations had touched a nadir, a low point, last seen in the 1971 war for the liberation of Bangladesh. We all know what happened then, how India was pushed into the Soviet camp, and it had nowhere else to go to rely on its weapons and equipment and support in the UN Security Council, etc. India relied 100% on the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and they backed us 100% to the hilt. America at that time was in the Pakistani camp, as Donald Trump is now jumped into the Pakistani camp, and he's become so fond of a great Democrat called Field Marshal Asim Munir, right? But at that time also Richard Mulhouse Nixon had become a darling of Yahya Khan, the mass murderer of Bangladesh, the man who stole the only free and fair elections held in Pakistan. So, the simple fact is that America backed Pakistan to the hilt despite America's backing, and America had made an outreach to China via Pakistan, right? It had broken up the Russia, China, the Soviet Union, China alliance. It had broken under the very smart geopolitical guidance of Henry Kissinger, who was the architect of this rapprochement between America and China, right? So, they had both come together. Despite their coming together, India broke Pakistan in two, the only decisive conflict in the Cold War, in which a new country was created with the force of arms. 93,000 prisoners of war surrendered, and India had re-engineered the entire security architecture of South Asia. It was in Joe Biden's time that America went back to the days of 71. It tried to destabilize the entire re-engineering of subcontinental security that India had achieved in 1971. How the CIA and the ISI conspired to overthrow the pro-India regime in Bangladesh. We are all aware of that story. And then Joe Biden turned implacably hostile. They took $1 billion from us to sell us the GE 404, GE 414 engines. They stabbed us in the bloody back by refusing to supply those engines for 2 long years when our MiG-21s were being phased out. And then you want us to buy, my God, you want us to buy more American weapons so that we can be stabbed in the back again? Once bitten, twice shy. Who will go in for American weapons if this is the record? Even the Europeans are having second thoughts, because they now see that the F-35 that America is asking them to buy in not dozens but in hundreds, all have a kill switch. You buy billions of dollars, and when I want to turn it off, all your investment will go down the bloody drain. And you want us to do that? You want us to stop buying weapons and equipment from reliable sources like Russia? I mean, it's a tried and tested friend. But the simple fact is that the United States is done everything in its power. We had hoped that with the return of Donald Trump, things would change. In fact, there was a sigh of relief in India when Donald Trump won the election. We thought back of his first term, Howdy Modi, Namaste Trump, Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar, etc., etc. But we found a strange new matrix. We found a strange new matrix coming up. We thought Donald Trump had a long-term agenda, what is called grand strategic design. But suddenly, we found Donald Trump turned transactional, turned tactical, turned mercurial, and change minute by minute, hour by hour, become like a kaleidoscope, forever shifting, forever changing his tune. You see, if you understand the other countries' grand strategic design, the overall strategy, the American governments used to take out a strategy, national security strategy paper in every administration that laid out what it planned to do and what were its priorities, etc., etc., and it helped the rest of the world to cope or to either align itself or to protect itself from the consequence of such politics. But the simple fact is that how can you strategize in the long term if Donald Trump is going to turn everything topsy-turvy? Everything will be on a minute by minute mood, whim basis, whimsical basis. That would breed international anarchy at the time of a multipolar order. And this instability, this lack of long-term planning, strategic planning, etc., would be very disruptive of the global order. Extremely disruptive. It could lead to massive long-term conflicts. Whatever it is, we found Donald Trump almost pushing India into the Russia-India-China triangle. Pushing, literally kicking India that side, because 25% tariffs on India, he singled out India for humiliation. 25% tariffs, 25% more, 50% tariffs now because you are buying oil and gas and you are buying weapons from Russia. For God's sake, give us a break, because we get them cheap. They are useful for our economy. You are also buying uranium and rare earths from Russia. Does that not help the Russian war chest against Ukraine? Only Indian money helps it. I mean, there were hypocrisy galore. So when we found all this happening, India had no option but to realize the score, to concede what is reality. We would like to be friends with America. That's a given. Who would? But if there is such a price to pay in terms of our sovereignty, in terms of our strategic autonomy, in terms of India now once again a country of 1.4 billion people becoming a colony of the United States, I don't think that will quite happen. And it is rather unrealistic of Donald Trump to imagine that that will happen in the 21st century, that the 21st century will go back to the 18th century of colonial conquest. That's not happening any longer. So India has made an outreach to Russia. The Indian National Security Advisor is now presently in Moscow, and he has given us the welcome news that in this month, maximum next month, September, President Putin will be visiting New Delhi for the annual summit dialogue. Before that, President Putin, Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping will be meeting in Beijing for the Shanghai SCO summit. There will be one-to-one meetings between the Indian PM and the Russian President. So things are quite clear. We can also, pay back your compliments if you try and humiliate us, if you try and push us, if you try and, ram things down our throats, ask us to disregard our national self-interest and serve the interests of the United States of America. Well, the simple fact is that India is not as yet the 51st state of the United States. And I don't think that is going to happen in the next million years. So why push us? Why push India? You pushed India, this is the comeback. This visit by the National Security Advisor will be followed up by the visit of the Indian Foreign Minister. What Donald Trump has done, he's managed to push Russia into the Russia-India-China triangle. He's managed to make it a reality which may not have happened otherwise. May not have happened otherwise. And I'm sure future generations of American geostrategic pundits will ask, who lost India? Donald Trump did. Donald Trump did. That's a fact. Now, the simple fact is, what are we going to discuss? What is likely to happen when President Putin comes to India? I for one think that a deal for buying about 2, maximum 3 squadrons of Su-57s, manufacturing them in India under transfer of technology, sharing of source codes, that is the biggest deal that will come through, and that will be the biggest riposte to the bullying of Donald Trump. He's invited it himself. He's pushed us in a corner, and when pushed into a corner, countries react. Needlessly pushed India into a corner, needlessly cozied up to a defunct country like Pakistan that can't give 3 square meals a day, 2 square meals a day to its citizens. You want to bring that up as the alternative to India? Well, you are welcome. You are welcome. Your protege state may not exist for very long. India will. India will. So help us God. So, one is the Su-57 deal for stealth 5th generation fighters. The simple fact is, China is going to supply at 50% cost about 2 squadrons worth of J-35 fighters to Pakistan. Pakistani pilots are already under training. So, we are building our AMCA, damn good, but that is going to take 10 years to be part of our squadrons. In the interim, we need an interim solution, which is Su-57. It most certainly not is the F-35, and now with this 25% tariff slap, 50% tariff, I think you can just about forget it, whatever hopes that America had of striking that kind of a deal. So, that is number one. India is to get 2 more regiments of the S-400 missile. They did a fantastic job in Operation Sindoor. I mean, they proved to be the money's worth. So, there are 2 more balance. I am sure we will get that. America is also offering to us the S-500. They are offering that we could even join in the production of the S-500. So, we are making our khusha, but I am sure 1 or 2 squadrons of the S-500 also may do us good. We could even say that instead of the S-400 2 squadrons, give us the S-500s, balance 2 squadrons or more, because that would make the Indian integrated air defense invincible. We could stop even a nuclear attack against India if we have this kind of an air defense shield. India and Russia could negotiate about the Arctic trade. The Arctic Ocean has melted, the polar ice caps are melting, and that opens up new avenues of trade and access. So, India and Russia could cooperate majorly in that. Rupee-ruble parity is a big problem that, as we have been facing continually, it is often talked of, but no permanent solution has been found. So, we could go in for digital rubles, digital rupees, and that may perhaps make the transactions much easier and much faster. We could go in for such a digital currency for intra-BRICS trade. And there are more than 24 countries which are now in BRICS, and many more are wanting to join. And by the way, the economy of the BRICS, the GDP of the BRICS countries, sum total is more than that of the G7, right. So, if Donald Trump wants to say that BRICS is his new prime enemy, well, then BRICS includes an I called India, and India will then have to take care of its own, protect its own national sovereign interests. We could go in for long-term energy deals, like Russia has signed with Iran, like Russia has signed with China. China and Russia have signed long-term energy deal. that takes advantage of the current low prices and fixes them in perpetuity for decades. That would be a great help, because we are not going to buy energy from America, which is 5 times the distance, almost 2 to 3 times the cost. So, I mean, why do we have to do that? To deliberately give a knock to our economy just to please America, and America on the contrary imposing 50% tariffs against India. I think this game has now reached dead end. You pushed us into a corner, and the blame for who lost India will entirely be in the camp of Donald Trump, unless even at this stage his geopolitical pundits realize the long term mistake that they are making in pushing India, China, Russia together. It would be very antithetical to American geopolitical interest. Mercantilism be damned. Geopolitics will prevail in the end. And this new order of mercantilism based on Donald Trump tariffs and trade wars with the rest of the world, which has hurt mostly the American allies and friends. Canada, Mexico, Europe, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, they've all been adversely impacted by Donald Trump's mercurial brand of trade, tariffs and policies. How long this will last, how long this will take to stabilize, God only knows. But in the interim, the entire basis of stability in the international order has been severely undermined. People need to think long term. Nations can't work on a minute to minute change of directions. You see, going all 360 degrees of the compass, north now, south now, northwest now, southwest now, etc., etc., it doesn't work. It cannot work. And I think we might as well stabilize and stick to long term direction. That is the job of the top management. I don't think the top management in all nation states should get involved in minute to minute minutiae, minute to minute rule by Truth Social posts, Twitters, tweets. I think we may have to look in for a more stable order of working international relations. Jai Bharat, Jai Hind.